If your only strategy for winning a house is offering more money, you don't really have an offer strategy. Price matters, but sellers aren't just looking at the highest number. They're looking at the possible risk. They're looking at timing. They're looking at convenience. And more than anything, they're looking at how likely you are to actually close on the deal. Most buyers assume the highest number automatically wins. But here's the real truth. It doesn't. Sellers compare the entire package, and the goal here isn't to give away your protections just to look aggressive. The goal is to remove every piece of avoidable uncertainty from your offer. If offering more money is not the whole strategy, then what actually makes an offer feel stronger to a seller? Before I break that down, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Trevor Wilson. I'm a realtor here in Orange County, and I help buyers understand how to compete strategically without making emotional or reckless decisions. Most buyers start building their offer by asking, how much should we offer? But that's usually not the first question that we should be asking. The first question is, what does this particular seller actually care about? So let's break down the things that actually make an offer stronger. The first thing that we will discuss is understanding what the seller actually wants. Before we ever write a number down, I am going to talk to the listing agent. I will ask about the seller's preferred closing date, asking if they need extra time after closing, or whether certainty, speed, or convenience matters most to them. Never assume every seller has the same priorities, because they don't. You cannot build the strongest offer until you understand what the seller considers strong. Once we know what the seller actually wants, the next step is proving that my buyer can actually deliver it, because a great price means very little if the seller doesn't trust that you as the buyer can actually close. The second thing that we will discuss is making the financing feel certain. So when we submit an offer, we submit a strong current approval, not just a vague pre-qualification letter. We make sure that the lender you're working with is available to speak directly with the listing agent. We provide clear proof of funds for the down payment and for the closing costs, and we handle as much of the financial review as possible before the offer even goes in. We want to make sure that there are no last minute questions that make my buyer look unprepared. The seller isn't only asking how much you're offering, they're asking how confident they should be that you can actually close on the deal. But strong financing can still get weakened by one surprisingly common mistake. That is a sloppy offer package. You can have a well-qualified buyer and a competitive price and conditions, but your offer can still introduce doubt with paperwork that is confusing. The third thing that we will discuss is submitting a clean, complete offer. I double check every name, date, and signature, so there's no unexplained blanks. There's no conflicting terms, and we present the important terms clearly and include every supporting document with the initial submission so the listing agent and the seller can easily evaluate it. A sloppy offer creates doubt before negotiations even begin. After price and paperwork, there's another negotiation tool buyers overlook, and it doesn't necessarily cost them anything. That tool is timing. The fourth thing that we will discuss is using timing as a negotiation tool. When it makes sense, we will match the seller's preferred closing timeline. We stay flexible around possession if that's what they need. And before we ever promise a date, we discuss it with the lender first. Faster does not automatically equal better. Sometimes the seller actually needs more time, and giving them that is worth more than a slightly higher price. Timing can make the transaction more convenient, but sellers also want to know how serious the buyer really is. One way buyers communicate that is through their earnest money deposit, and this has to be handled carefully. The fifth thing that we will discuss is strengthening the deposit thoughtfully. A meaningful deposit can signal seriousness, but the amount of timing always have to stay within your actual level of comfort and your contract obligations. This isn't just extra money handed to the seller, and it should never be increased casually without understanding the risk and the protections tied to it. A larger deposit can make an offer look more committed, but commitment should never be confused with recklessness. And that's especially true when buyers start talking about shortening or removing their contingencies. The sixth thing that we will discuss is being strategic, not reckless with your contingencies. Contingencies do protect you. They should never be waived blindly. Shorter timelines can help, but only when your lender, your inspector, and you as the buyer are actually prepared to move that fast. Inspection, appraisal, and financing each need their own strategy. The strongest offer is not necessarily the one with the fewest protections, but my job is not to remove every protection just to win. My job is to remove any unnecessary uncertainty while protecting my buyer where it actually matters. A larger deposit and tighter contingencies can make an offer look more committed, but even after comparing price, financing, and contingencies, sellers are still looking at one final number, and it is not always the purchase price. It's how much they actually walk away with, aka their net. Which brings us to the seventh thing we will discuss is considering the seller's net, not only the headline price. Seller's credits and concessions affect what the seller actually net. Repair requests, closing costs requests, fees, all of it changes how offers compare against one another. We structure these requests intentionally instead of adding them automatically just because we can. Sometimes a slightly lower offer with cleaner economics is the more attractive one. But even the strongest numbers on paper don't tell the seller what the transaction is actually going to feel like once escrow opens. That's where the buyer's agent, the lender, and the way the offer is communicated make a huge impact. The eighth and final thing that we'll talk about is communication and reputation. The buyer's agent needs to be responsive, calm, and professional, and the lender needs to answer calls and be able to speak confidently about the buyer's approval letter. The offer presentation should explain the buyer's strength without applying unnecessary pressure, and the follow-up after submission should stay respectful, not pushy. An offer is a contract, but the people presenting it can increase or decrease the seller's confidence in the entire transaction. This might sound like a collection of small details, but I've watched those details completely change the outcome of a negotiation. So let me give you a real life example. So I was representing the buyers on this one, and there was a home that just hit the market. It was priced slightly below the market value. It is a strategy that the sellers used on purpose to create competition and drive a bidding war. The second my clients and I walked through the home, we instantly knew that this was the one that they had to have. So I called the listing agent to gather a little bit more information. I appreciated that she shared how many offers they already had and how many more they were expecting. Then I asked her one last question, which went something like this. Besides price, what could we do to make our offer stand out to her sellers? That one question put us one step ahead of every other buyer who didn't bother asking that. She told me that the sellers were already in escrow on their replacement property and they needed a quick, smooth close. So we built our offer exactly around that. We had a 14-day close of escrow with contingencies shortened to 7 days. And by the time offers were due, there were already around 7 other offers competing against ours. The listing agent called and told me that our offer was not the highest price on the table, but she chose it anyways because of the reputation me and my team have built, and because she trusted that working with us, the deal was actually going to close smoothly without any drama. On our end, we shortened every contingency to 7 days, but my buyers did not lose a single protection. We just had to move a little bit quicker, which means doing our homework up front so we knew that we could move with confidence that this was the right home before the clock even started. The seller didn't pick us because we had the highest number. She picked us because I took the extra step to figure out exactly what her and her sellers needed because of the relationship I had built with that agent, and because my clients trusted my guidance in a multiple offer situation. Instead of panicking and just throwing more money at it, the lesson here is simple. It's not always about the bigger number. Every home on the market has a different circumstance. Every seller has different motivations, and no two negotiations play out the same way. That strategy helped my buyers compete, but there's an important line between being competitive and becoming desperate. So before you try any of these tactics yourself, here's what I would never advise a buyer to do just so they can win a house. You should never exceed a comfortable budget just because there's competition. Do not waive protections without fully understanding what you're giving up. Don't promise a timeline your lender cannot actually meet. Don't ignore inspection or insurance concerns just because you're excited. And don't treat winning as more important then buying the right property. The goal is not to win at all costs. The goal is to buy the right home on terms you can actually live with after the excitement wears off. So here are some of my final takeaways. How do you compete without overpaying, without giving up every protection, and without making a decision you'll regret? You build an offer that gives the seller confidence while still protecting your long-term interests. The strongest offer is the one that combines responsible price with preparation, certainty, clean terms, and a real understanding of what the seller actually needs. I'm not here to tell buyers to throw more money at every house. I'm here to help them understand where the real leverage exists and where the risk simply is not worth it. If you're buying in Orange County, subscribe. I'll be breaking down real negotiations, actual deals, and the strategies that can help you compete without making a decision that you will regret. Thank you for tuning in and learning how to make your offer stronger in all areas except for the purchase price. Follow for my next video where I will be explaining terms that every buyer and seller should know. It'll be a good one. And remember, just like always, Trevor, out.